Welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this morning. Two Celtic players last night from the A team made a little appearance for the B team. Yes, it was interesting to see Jamal Simpson-Puzzi finally pull on a Celtic shirt in Fife. Yes, for the B team. And Callum Osmond also pulled on the shirt for the B team, but it wasn't a successful night for the B team, to say the least. They did go 1-0 up, and then it was 1-1 at half time from Bayview and the good old Kingdom of Fife against East Fife. The starting team, as you can see, was Rice, Crawford, Kyle, Simpson-Puzzi, Borland, Daly, Keenan, Izuguzu, Osmond, Summers and Obidoui, or however you pronounce that. There was a couple of guys that were going to that game last night, so it'll be interesting to hear what they said for it. But anyway, the full time ends with defeat. Celtic said at Bayview, despite the second half goals from two Celtic players. It ended up 5-3. Not the exact result that Jamal Simpson-Puzzi may be looking for in his Celtic career. Not the little, I'm a solid defender, is it? Really? A bit of a nightmare for Simpson-Puzzi, to say the least. You know, you were thinking that if he's come from Manchester City and he's this uprising star, and then him and Callum Osmond just don't do anything in the B team. I wonder if the manager was looking at it, or if he'll just take his report cards from the B team staff. That'll be an interesting one. Anyway, we move on from that because Willie Collum's also been talking. Before we get to the Callum McGregor story from Chris Sutton, you remember the spot kick that we got? VAR review showed it was a really debatable incident, says Willie Collum. What do you expect? After the penalty was given Kilmarnock, it won't be given again. No, especially at Celtic Park. So I don't expect Celtic to get any penalties anytime soon. It's nothing that we really get on an ongoing basis anyway. The big thing about VAR being up, and obviously remember the ball ricocheted and hit off his arm. Now, if it was in a European competition, and there's a lot of people been talking about Europe and the fact that Netflix and Amazon are all going to be fighting out for a $5 billion deal. It's nothing to do with Celtic, because we're not going to be in the Champions League. We're not going to see any of that money, so that's why I never spoke about it. But Willie Collum says, look, the feeling is that it should not have been punished going forward if it happens. Nobody has accepted this. Moving forward, the exact same decision, if it happens again, we do not give the penalty kick. But in a European context, Willie, that's why the Scottish referees are not getting any game time at European level. Because the standard of refereeing in Scotland is just woeful. And your European power brokers see that, and that's why you're not getting any game. But anyway, we move on from that. It was an interesting article. The Lankies returned under a new name. The Mute Man PLC. Big Rab says, nice to see the SFA are changing the rules again. Yeah, they just changed them to suit themselves, aren't they? There's surely a certain manager about to come in across the road. They're just tidying up all the desks, aren't they? But anyway, the less about that mob, the better. What was the rating of Osmond? Poor. I've said when he came in, Osmond, he was a poor man's Daniel Cummins. He was nowhere near the level that Daniel Cummins was at the B team for Celtic. And he was brought in with this hurrah that he was going to come in from Fulham and go into the first team. And it was just to appease someone at Celtic, I think, because he's not ready for first team football, Callum Osmond. I mean, you've seen that during the summer. Anyway, getting to big Chris Sutton, because Chris Sutton's been sticking the boot in. He says that Callum McGregor is copying Celtic flack, which is grossly unfair because he's not hiding like some others. Who does he mean, the others? Well, we all know who they are. Rio Hatate, Dies and Maeda. They're the ones that are hiding on the pitch. But he says, look, as far as I'm concerned, McGregor is struggling a wee bit because of what's going on around him. I have mentioned this before. I've said this before about when you look at Callum McGregor's career and you look at the players that played around them, they were always of a better and higher standard and older. And Callum's now the older player, and he's got a standard of player that's not been up to where players that he's played with in the past are. And sometimes as a player, it can make you a little bit weary of passing to Celtic players and stuff, or making indecisions. But there are some fans who believe it's not just the ball that's going backwards, but it's Callum McGregor. They reckon the captain's performances are going way back too. But I think this is criticism of the midfielder who's way off the mark, says Chris Sutton. It shouldn't come as a surprise, but I remember Neil Lennon got booed at Celtic Park for passing the ball back against Brovista. I remember that. And that was in the UEFA Cup semi-final. Unlike Neil, at least McGregor tries to pass the ball forward sometimes. Oh, brum-dum, wee bit of a... But it's true, because Neil Lennon wasn't great at going forward with the ball. He was great at sweeping up and sort of passing it sideways to wingers and stuff. He was never he was a holding midfield player that did the job of holding the midfield. Do you know, I can always remember people saying, can Lambert play with, what was his name, the Burnley guy, I forgot his name now. Anyway, move on. But anyway, I think that at least like McGregor, he tries to pass the ball forward sometimes. Craig Burley. There was a lot of people said, can Craig Burley and Paul Lambert play in the same team? There was a lot of people also said, can Paul Lambert and Neil Lennon play in the same team? Because they were similar type of players. You know, that holding midfield role. Weren't great at going forward. Paul Lambert was sublime at just, and then Scott Brown, the end of his career, he wasn't going forward as much either. He coped the flack and he thinks it's grossly unfair, says, do you agree? Tell me in the comments, do you agree with the sentiment that Callum McGregor has been reduced to the level of the player that he's playing with? Because that's what Chris Sutton's getting at. Chris Sutton then also goes on to say, as far as I'm concerned, he is struggling a wee bit because of what's going on around him. He's simply on a different level to any of the players in the Celtic team. That's a big one for Sutton to say. I know what he's getting at, and I can understand it. And you know, when you look at him as a player, you've got to look at the level of the player that he's playing with now. If you misplace a pass in your 20s, it's just a poor ball. If you misplace a pass in your late 20s, 30s, you're over the hill. I don't think McGregor will ever lose the ability in terms of awareness and his first quick pass. And there lies the issue. McGregor has that vision of a quick pass, but if the players that are around him are not making room for themselves, are not making the runs forward, then Callum's then going, and it looks as if Callum's slowing the game down, when the reality is that he's looking at Rio and he's expecting Rio to start making a run so he can make the forward pass. But if Rio's just standing there going, what's Callum to do? Big Sutton says, I think there are players in the current team who are hiding, and that kills the flow. Hiding. He's talking about midfield players. Looks like Rio Hatate has been a shadow of the player that we've seen at Celtic in recent years. Yes, I think Rio Hatate. I'm surprised that Celtic didn't cash in on Rio Hatate in the summer because he had 3 years left on his contract. Everyone goes through peaks and troughs. Hatate has always been one who could throw an occasional poor game. But right now he looks miles off it. We're not seeing the runs into the box on the left channel at the moment. Celtic have been far and few between. Exactly. When you think about O'Reilly and the movement of O'Reilly, and O'Reilly scored so many goals because, let's face it, he got some cracking passes from Callum McGregor. But anyway, he doesn't have the speed of McGregor possesses, and he doesn't. I mean, look at Hatate's just not got any speed at all. And then he does go on to go about Matt O'Reilly and the fact that Celtic are missing someone like Matt O'Reilly. Even Greg Taylor, he goes on to say, it was a huge step in the midfield, but he's not quite there the same with Kieran Tierney playing a different type of role. So you have to take into account the opposition, and they know this how to snuff out McGregor. If they and teams have been doing it for a couple of seasons now. You man Mark McGregor in a game, and Celtic fall to bits, and then it looks like Callum's doing nothing but passing the ball sideways. He's not getting the help that the midfield should be giving him. So it is an interesting one by him this morning. Hatate was carrying an injury at the end of the season, no bidders. Yeah, but you think that he was ready for pre-season, wasn't he? But anyway. Like he says, our best mid three is Callum, Paulo and Luke. I'd agree with you with that, mate. I'd say that Callum, Paulo, although Paulo's been brought in to ultimately take over from Callum, I think, but they two going further forward. Luke McCowan is so underrated at Celtic. Do you know, but we always look at the big price tags of the players that are getting kept on the bench, but if you've got an in-form Luke McCowan going forward, and do you know he's scoring goals, he should be in the team. It's as simple as that. CFC 88 says, I was a Greg Taylor fan and people slaughtered him. Look what we've got. Well, we've got a lame, misfiring, unfit Kieran Tierney. Joseph Doherty says that he reckons that he's knackered. I don't think he's knackered. I do think it comes down to what is around him as a player. It's as simple as that. Callum and Paulo can play the sixth role. I haven't seen these two can rotate. Yeah, they can that. Going on with Chris Sutton. He says the truth is they're an average, the midfield of this team, and at the moment they're finding their way. The people around them are that average that they're not picking up enough slack. It's nothing to do with McGregor's age. In years to come, he will slip out the team because of his physicality. It won't be his level. It happens to every player. But right now, for me, Callum McGregor is virtually irreplaceable. Is he irreplaceable? A lot of the fans don't think so, Chris. And I can understand why you're saying, because he does have the vision. And people are saying I'm getting fed up of McGregor pointing. And maybe he's pointing because he's disheartened that players aren't. If Callum's spending more time pointing at a game, it means that the players aren't doing the jobs that they're meant to be doing. And Callum's having to tell them more. Which then does go back to the case. Oh, the dog's just seen a cat. Go on and get it. And it does come back to the case where, what does Brendan Rodgers do with the midfield? It's the big question. Anyway, I can also say that Sebastian Tenecte, for what we've seen of him, he looks like he's a player that will help elevate Callum McGregor back to the form that we're used to. Because I think that the pace that he has going forward, Callum will pick out some fantastic passes to this guy. Once they I hope they've used this week to really get to know each other on the pitch and get the rhythm of the play really in sync with each other. Because Callum will put through some passes to Sebastian Tenecte, and you watch him then whipping balls for the striker. And then nobody will be talking about Callum not being fit and not being passing backwards. That's just my take on it. Anyway, that's us covered quite a bit this morning. A lot of stuff getting written about Jamal Simpson Pussy and the fact that he played the game last night. It's not a great result for him, is it? Making his Celtic debut for the B team as he finds his March sharpness. Why did Celtic if he's came to Celtic and he's been carrying an injury and he's not been fit, surely Celtic would have known this at the point of taking him on loan. Surely that's the kind of question that's asked. I mean, because we're right into October now. Okay, he came at the beginning of September at the end of the transfer window, but 4 weeks, 5 weeks of him not being fit enough for the first team, and then he goes into the B team and they get beat 5-3. I mean, if you're Reece Fife, you're looking at this guy and going, Man City? You having a laugh? You having a laugh? Man City? But anyway, we've got him for a season. We'll see what happens with him. And let's jump into the comments. Just before we leave this morning, we've got 3 players who could be decent in the space between midfield and the forwards, like Luke, Benji, yep. Yeah, this is true. What about Bernardo? Yeah, Bernardo should be in the midfield every day. Anyway, that's all I'm doing this morning. There is no football today, no Celtic, boring farts at this international break. Have a fantastic day, Celtic fans, wherever you are, all around the world.